It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. You can find me at Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting. You just give me an email at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. Really excited about our guest today, Bart Kamp, coming to us from the UK. He's written a book called Prayer Man, More Than a Fuzzy Picture. And you could find out more about this book and this extensive research at prayer-man.com. You can also find him on Twitter at PM is Lee Oswald. PMISLEEOSWALD at Twitter. Also, too, on Facebook, you can find it, too, again, Prayer Man, More Than a Fuzzy Picture. And he's going to be doing a video presentation at the Lancer Conference in November in Dallas, on November 17th, 18th, and 19th at the Lorenzo Hotel. It's called the assassinationconference.com and JFK You can go there and buy your tickets and check out the live stream of Bart Kamp. Bart Kamp, are you there?
Yes, I am, sir.
Thank you so much, man. We were talking off the air, man. Great reviews on this book so far. But before we get into prayer, man, tell us about yourself. Who's Bart Kamp?
Bart Kamp is a Dutchman, so that's Holland. And I've lived in London for almost 30 years now. I'm a professional photographer and somebody who's also been active in interactive technology. And with relation to this book, I started dropping out of some of the social media channels that I was using back in 08 and 09. By about 2010, I just went, you know what, spend less time on social media and spend more time reading. And then I decided to get a handful of books. All mostly were JFK or RFK related. And read those and slowly just became more and more interested about it. And I started in 2014 first of all, in 2013, I made an interactive presentation that I put up that's still on YouTube, where I'm basically demonstrating various types of media in one window, basically in a multi-touch format, where I basically could interact with PDFs, videos, and pictures at the same time, all in one window. And from there on, 2014, at that time, I was also getting interested in a forum post that was about Prayer Man on the education forum. And I was of the opinion, as a professional photographer and who can read a picture fairly well, looking at it, I was pretty much convinced that that particular person on those steps, with the quality of that picture at that time, resembled somebody very close to Lee Harvey Oswald. And I thought, this is as dumb and stupid as Badge Man. Badge Man is another thing that started about 20, 30 years prior. And this was somebody about a particular shooter behind a fence. And I could never see it as what it was painted in as such. I could not put it together. And slowly, in that forum post, there were arguments put together or statements of some of the people that were either on the steps or were inside the building, were making contradictory statements. And at that point, people were just starting to use a method of basically, especially Sean Murphy and a handful of others in 2013, to say, like, well, who qualifies standing there? Is this guy an office worker, or is he a laborer? And is he white? Is he Hispanic? Is it a male or female? Now, quickly, it was already decided that it was a male, Caucasian, and he looked like a worker. He didn't look like an office guy, because the office guys all wear crisp white shirts. So,
well, you know what, Bart Kamp, well, let's back up just a second here.
Yeah.
If people go to the website, prayer-man, and then you want to look up Prayer Man in a nutshell, you'll see the original photos, which are quite a distance, almost from across the street. Okay.
It's where the films are made at the time of the turning, going from Houston onto Elm.
Gotcha.
That's when those films were made. So they're at least 30 feet away, if not more. So, and the problem is that they shot it on 16 mil, those two those cameramen, but they shot it with wide-angle lenses. They shot it with like a 10-millimeter lens, give or take, between 9 and 11-millimeter lens. So normally a wide-angle lens on, say, a 35-mil camera is like something like 28-millimeter as such. That's regarded as a wide-angle lens. So that's even more wide-angle, even though it's a 16-millimeter format. But at the same time, it's also somebody who's standing at the very far end of a set of steps, which is the front entrance of the Texas School Book Depository. So it couldn't have been any worse. It's only that, we're actually lucky that there are films of that moment, because if you look at the sequence from Wiekman, who was in camera car 1, his camera basically swerves to the right, but it's more due to movement in the car. And he had his camera, so he wasn't, he didn't have a Steadicam or a tripod or anything like that. He's sitting in a car on the back seat, and they're like leaning forward, and he's holding the finger on the trigger basically, and releases and shoots the film while it's all happening. But this camera is just wobbling about. I mean, that same sequence shortly after the material in question I'm talking about, he's running down Elm Street going onto the grassy knoll, and that footage is so heavily blurred. So, it's going all over the place. And actually that footage has been used in a lot of documentaries that are viewable on YouTube as such. The other one is just static for a few seconds, and basically they trace the running policeman, the helmeted policeman, that appears to go towards the building as such.
So in relation to the shooting, like, what's the time? By the way, again, go to prayer-man.com, then look up Prayer Man in a nutshell. You can talk about these pictures we're talking about here. Yeah. They start off large, and then they get really focused in. Two guys, and I think that's even Bigfoot next to them. Okay, it's really hard to see these pictures. Okay, but the thing is, in relation to the actual shooting, what's the timing on when this photo was taken?
Oh, right. So the Wiekman film, the Wiekman film is shot during the shooting. According to Wiekman's own telephone interview he did with Richard Sprague, he felt the force of the third shot. And basically, if you watch the Wiekman film, so he films the front stairs twice, and then shortly after that bit, he climbs out of the car. You see the camera aiming down, it sees the front right of the car, and then he's basically running down with the camera rolling, and starts filming the people that have actually gone down to the grass, like the Newmans and the Hesters and so forth. Now, Darnell is 2 cars behind, so anything between 6 and 10 seconds after that event, probably close to 10, so all the people start to spread out and move back, and some people start running, this, that, and the other. And so you're getting into a bit where you start to compare those two sequences, and you see people that were standing, right, they were standing over there, they've moved over there, and just slowly start to, it's difficult, but you are finding people again in that time sequence that have just moved, say, several feet away from where they were standing before. Of course, there's chaos. Of course, there's huge amount of curiosity and what's going on, and all people moved relatively quickly more down Elm to see what was happening down there as such. So to go back to my history, like we talked about earlier, in 2013, when I got involved with the interactive presentations, then Prayer Man was, to me, something that I hadn't touched yet, but I basically looked at it and went, if anything can solve a really important aspect of the case, like Oswald being innocent of murdering John F. Kennedy, then I thought Prayer Man could be it. So, and that made me start researching in 2015. I started really early that year, and I started going through archives. I mean, 2014 was basically just sitting on forums and looking through the posts and what had everybody gathered around and what they'd written and so forth, and you start taking stock. And then slowly you start going into archives, because the documentation is, of course, the most important part. Who says what, where, and when. And I could have never thought that it was going to be such a mission to the amount of material that's actually available. 2015, that year, I spent mostly at what is called the Harold Weisberg archives, which are at Hood College. And then slowly we started going towards NARA. I had a friend who didn't live far away from NARA in Washington and the National Archives, and he went down there for me. And then in 2018, the most important thing happened with regards to my work. I met Malcolm Blunt. I met him in 2016 at a conference for Dealey Plaza UK, and then I came over to his place in October 2018, and I was supposed to help him out with digitizing an archive that he had purchased from Harry Livingston. It was very big on the autopsy of Kennedy. And then at the same time, I got hold of the material that is from his archive. Now, for those that don't know, Malcolm Blunt is a really deep researcher, started more than almost 30 years ago, and has been going to the National Archives in Washington several times, and also been going to the Municipal Archives of Dallas back in the 90s. But he was there for really extensive periods, like 3 periods of 6 months, just staying in Dallas and just going through the archives. And the same he's done in Washington as well. So he had a massive collection. We're talking about 25 big, heavy file cabinets, 4-drawer cabinets, completely filled up to the brim with paper. And I went through it all, and I digitized it all, and it basically comprises of tons of stuff from the Dallas Police, the FBI, Secret Service, lots of CIA stuff, lots of Cuban stuff, some crime stuff, but overall an enormous collection. But it basically enriched my material so much, because I managed to find documents that I could not have dreamt of getting my hands on, and instead I got them, and it enriched my material to such an extent that after I produced 4 papers that were released in June last year, Malcolm said to me, "You should do a book." And I was like, yeah, maybe I should, because I've done so much work on it. I mean, the ebook has 1,220 odd interactive links to click on, to go to documents, to go to videos, to go to pictures, books.
Yeah, I got to tell you, Bart, your work has really paid off, because if you go to Amazon and check out Prayer Man, More Than a Fuzzy Picture, the book's only been out, man, like not even a week, man. It's out September 3rd, and already the reviews are like through the roof. You know, like this is very respected work you're doing here.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Oh, sure. Well, that's not me. So I hadn't been ready yet. I'm telling you what the people. So and you know, the people who got this book the day it came out, you know, these aren't people just, you know, passing by, you know, watching JFK the movie. These are serious researchers. So, but give us the significance, though. We find this guy here. The significance of this is if that is a picture of Lee Harvey Oswald, then he could not have been up there in the sniper's nest firing the gun.
Yeah, that's one. I mean, the picture is, to me and the others that have been seriously researching this, is the cherry on top. Because although the picture got the attention of all of us and we looked at it, you know what? Everyone interprets it slightly different than the other person next to him. This is how it happens. So that's when the quest went, right, hold on a minute, is there actually any evidence that supports this assertion that Lee Oswald stood on the front steps of the Texas School Book Depository while JFK was shot? So, and that's when the hunt is on. And this started back then in that thread on the Education Forum back in 2013. And people started to compare and discuss. And then what happens then also is that because we've got the movie where Oswald's seen in, and we've got in that very same movie, the Darnell film, where Marion Baker, the patrolman, is running towards the building. And basically Marion Baker is related to what is called the second floor lunchroom encounter. Now, the second floor lunchroom encounter is used as proof to show that Oswald went from the 6th floor down the stairs in the northwest corner and came down out and basically went into the lunchroom and was spotted by a patrolman, Marion Baker in this case, and who saw a glimpse of him through the door and confronted him. Now, at the time when Baker walks up the stairs, there's a person called Roy Truly. And Roy Truly was the superintendent of the building. Now, what really struck me as odd was that 2.5 weeks later, after the event, if I may call it like that, the big event, 2.5 weeks later, Roy Truly said that he was walking in front of Marion Baker, and it just went, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Who, if you want to show a police officer the way up, you're not going to go ahead of him while he's got his 38 drawn, and then you have a possible assassin coming down the stairs. You'd be right in the middle of the crossfire. I think, and the policeman, I doubt, would have said like, oh yeah, you just walk ahead of me and just do that. So that was already something for me, and that made me question and especially investigate the second floor lunchroom encounter. Now, the second floor lunchroom encounter has been investigated many, many times from the first generation researchers right there and then. Back in December, it was already questioned there and then, right away. And I then went in really deep, and this was happening during 2016. And I went in incredibly deep and basically put an 80-page essay together on just all the evidence that's available on that second floor lunchroom encounter. And it just shown, there's just a subterfuge of evidence that basically shown that the whole thing was fictitious and was basically created after they started to interrogate Lee Oswald. That's what it comes down to in a nutshell. And that basically also, at the same time, got the people's attention to look at at the individuals on the stairs. Real investigation, as in like the names of these people, is only something from the last 10, 12 years, not longer. People were identified roughly, man, woman, but other than that, nothing. And then slowly, some people started to look into the statements, and in some of the statements said, oh, I stood there and there with such and such and such. Okay, fine. So then slowly you just start to put like a little maze together, and who sees who, make a little spreadsheet, and you go, okay. And then you also start to, by identifying the men, you can also basically tick them off. Now, we're talking about a male individual, so we can tick all the females off right there and then. And then you read all the statements who said, like, yeah, I stood out on the steps. Because some of them said, well, I stood out on the steps, but then I walked further down. And the group that basically stood on the edge of Elm, on the turning, there was a whole group of about 8 to 10 people that were all Texas School Book Depository employees as well. So in the years 2012 till about 2018, there were a lot of individuals were identified on the steps and in front of the Texas School Book Depository.
Well, give me an example. Like in a picture like this, I count about 25 people, and that's not even deep into the steps in the dark there. Just out in the street in front of the doorway there's about 25 people. So in a group like that, how many have we specifically identified?
Well,
conclusively.
Most of the stair attendees are identified, but I'm going to be really precise here. In the Wiegman film, everyone is identified. But in the Darnell film, after the Wiegman film, if you see the film, and I saw it in close detail, some people are motioning to leave. What happens is that after Wiegman, the film is shot, that bit of the front steps, you can see in the Couch and the Darnell film, these are the two cameramen that sat in Camcar 3, and who actually both turned their cameras, but crossed as well towards the Texas School Book Depository. You can see that 2 people have left the stairs, and then there's another black guy who also have left the stairs. So 3 people have left, but we also see that 2 women are standing on the bottom of the stairs already on the right side, and also that's on the left-hand side, several people are going up. So the men that left all left from the what I call the westerly side of the steps, and basically created this space, and therefore people are going up already to get back into the building. Those people are too difficult to identify. What we did was basically use the Algin 6 photograph, which is the most famous photograph of JFK getting shot in the throat, where he basically has both his elbows up because he's shot, and he responds like that, and you see the Secret Service car right behind it. If you just Google Algin 6, it will show up. When you look at that, you see in the background, and this is how it starts basically, because there's a guy sticking his head out to look what's going on down Elm Street, because Elm Street is on a slight slope downwards. And the person, they thought that person was Lee Oswald. But it's actually Billy Lovelady. He was a co-worker of Oswald. Now, that basically draws a lot of people in there because, of course, many conspiracy theorists think like, oh, no, it's Oswald. No, it's Oswald. It's Oswald. Because that picture is all over the newspapers. It's syndicated all over because Algins was a Associated Press photographer, so hence the syndication. And sorry, I just lost my train of thought for a sec here.
You were saying that
picture, the background on the stairs, they basically start pointing to a selection of the occupants of the stairs, which is roughly speaking, coming out of the chest of the Secret Service agents, because it's a 3D situation going into a 2D matter. But basically, you see 4 or 5 occupants on those steps. Now, they were the first ones that were recognized. And from there on, you start looking at the Wiegman and the Darnell films, because they're also from almost a opposite direction, angle, aiming at the stairs. And at which point also when people started doing that, it became clear that Billy Lovelady was the person sticking his neck out, and also Billy Lovelady is the person basically leaving the stairs almost immediately after the shots had been fired as such.
Well, then Bart, let me ask you this, because we have this picture here. There's other people in the picture. Have those people been interviewed and said, hey, was Oswald standing next to you? Who was standing next to you?
That's the beauty of it. Yeah. There are 5 or 6 people who said that they didn't see Oswald at all. There are... Well, if you look at it like that and say, well, you know what, none of them saw him. I'm thinking, okay, fine. Now let's go back to 60s Dallas and look back at the other occupants that were on those stairs. So first of all, there were 2 black guys. They weren't asked anything about anything. Neither were they interviewed a lot. Okay, so then we've got Buell Frazier, who stood next to Prayer Man, who got quite a harsh treatment in the sense of he had a pre-written statement pushed in front of him for him to sign by Captain Will Fritz, in which he was basically admitting to be a co-conspirator.
Yeah, Buell Frazier was the fellow who gave him a ride to work.
Exactly.
Yeah, people can go back in our archives. I interviewed Buell Frazier. You can check that out.
Yeah. So Frazier basically said, like, there's no way I'm going to sign that.
Yeah.
But just think about the tactic as such. The chief of homicide and robbery shoves a pre-made statement in front of you for you to sign. I mean, I don't know about you, but in Europe we frown on something like that. Okay.
Well, in some areas of the States they do, but what do you call it?
Okay.
Yeah, he talks about openly about intimidating folks down the road in front of his house, all kind of stuff, man. This guy,
yeah. And there was actually tons of that. Then the other person that stood next to Bill Shelley and Frazier was Joe Molina. And Joe Molina was Hispanic descent, and he also got really rough treatment because in the middle of the night, really heavy people from the Dallas DA and the Dallas Police Department came down to his place at 2 o'clock in the morning and tossed his house. Wow. Couldn't find anything and made him come into the Dallas police to take 2 statements. He spent almost the entire day there. There was a lot of pressure on people to shut up about things. And you know what? You got to also remember and take this into consideration. You see, when Oswald gets arrested, he's not arrested for shooting at the president. He's arrested because he's a cop killer. Now, on top of that, how long has he been working there? 5, 6 weeks? Mm. So, first of all, he barely knows anyone. Secondly, he's somebody who really sticks to himself. Someone who barely instigates a conversation. If you look at videos of him being interviewed in New Orleans, he's just standing there, and you think he's arrogant, and he doesn't want to talk. But the second you ask a question, he'll answer the question. So he's a bit of an oddball. That's what some people think he's got a mild form of Asperger's. Could be. I mean, it's never been diagnosed, but he wasn't a straightforward guy as you and me and most other person would be. He was slightly awkward and different.
And also, too, if we're to believe he was some type of intelligence asset, he would have either been directed to either, hey, draw attention to yourself, or don't draw attention to yourself as part of his assignment.
Yeah. You know what? I mean, there's things where you say, right, what is the actual setting where we're actually at? And 60s Dallas, I mean, I'm sorry, but, you know, that... If you're on the wrong side of the fence with that lot, you could be in a hell of a lot of trouble. Mm. And if you are at the wrong place at the wrong time, you could be also in an enormous amount of trouble. And thankfully, that's less than it was back then. I think justice was a whole different ball game than it is now, and that's worldwide. And, you know, the way blacks and Hispanics were treated, and, you know, they got heavy-handed treatments. And also when they find out that when Oswald's basically found out as a commie subversive, within 45 minutes of his arrest, they already come with the news that he is a defector. Well, I'm thinking, being a communist defector in Dallas in 1963, I don't think that's going to get you a lot of invites. So,
and also, you think if you were a communist defector in 1963 in Dallas, maybe the Secret Service would have checked you out in advance.
Well, you know, it depends. Depends. It should have been done between the FBI and the Secret Service. But the file, that's another thing. The file hadn't been sent over yet, or had just been sent over. This, that, and some euphemistic talk. It's not something I really dug into as such. I thought it was more important to find out what is happening during the shooting, inside the building, in front of the building, and what happens to Oswald afterwards. Like, in relation to that photograph, is there actually other information that points to Oswald being out front? And there's quite a few things that basically point to Oswald standing there as such. So, first of all, the Will Fritz notes. Will Fritz took notes. They're not contemporary, but they resemble a written report from the 6 interrogations he's done, and it was just scribbled down on paper. But more importantly, the FBI agents who walked in at 3:15 in the afternoon, James Hosty and James Willingham Bookhout, Hosty started taking notes, and those notes are important, but you can't really see the real context of them until you actually, which is a report that I found in 2019 in the Blunt Archives, which is written on the back of Dallas Police affidavit paper, and where Oswald states that he was outside to watch the presidential parade. And that
Wait,
was
who states that? Oswald states that?
Oswald states.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, and in the Fritz notes, it says outside in front with Bill Shelley. So he said, so how did he know that Bill Shelley was standing outside in front? How could he have known that? So, but it gets more specific with the Hosty notes. And then when you read this pre-report, that's what it is. It's a handwritten report. That particular report, combined with the flip book notes I just mentioned earlier, puts everything even in context as well, because in the flip book notes there's also that he's standing in front of the office as well. So there are 3 written reports made that point to Oswald being outside as such. And then during that first interrogation, what happens is that, and this is without the knowledge of the actual FBI agents, is that upstairs the FBI, the headquarters, are working really hard and fast of making Oswald the scapegoat. I mean, this is the thing about the book, because with there's 3 chapters. The first chapter is the prayer man chapter and all the people that are standing on the steps. The second chapter is inside the Texas School Book Depository, all the people that were inside the Texas School Book Depository. I'll get back to that in a minute. And then, of course, Oswald's interrogations. Now, Oswald's interrogations are basically put in a timeline. And it took me 6 years to put it together because I kept finding stuff. I never thought, when I started with the prayer man thing, that I thought that the interrogations was going to take more than half of what I was research-wise than what I was going to do, because at that time, by putting it in a chronological order, you're starting not just see the discrepancies, you're starting to see the covering up, you start to see why certain documents were kept behind until 2017, 2018.
Well, Bart Kamp, let me ask you a quick question, because my understanding is that there was no transcripts of there was no secretary in there was no dictation of the interrogation. So what?
Hosty was the only one that was present during the first interrogation that was writing.
Okay.
He wrote notes. Then after that, James Bookhout must have taken notes, but in FBI procedure back then was that you make your notes. Then once you've made your statement, you type up your statement, you are to destroy your handwritten notes. So that was a procedure, standard procedure. Now, James Hosty didn't do that, although he said he did it first, and then he couldn't find them, and then his book came out, and lo and behold, the notes have turned up. But those notes were very important.
Well then, what do you make of that chain of custody of his notes? What do you make of that?
They're handwritten notes,
okay.
And he basically used those notes to compile his report. That's what it is. Simple as that. So, back then, the reporters, the detectives and the special agents, they had, these flip books with a leather-bound thing that they had in their inside pocket of their jacket. Well, that's where it starts with. But then, Hosty goes into another room after the first interrogation when Oswald's going down for the Markham ID lineup. Hosty goes into the next office, and he takes down all the evidence that's been collected on Oswald that was lying there. And of course, part of that was his address book. There is no Heidel ID there, although some people claim there was, but there wasn't. And he starts he says in his book, he took a block of blank affidavit paper. So he basically used the back side of the block of affidavit documents, papers, and just started writing. He started writing about the evidence, but he also started writing a pre-report. And that report is where it basically says he was outside watching the parade. That is already nullified within hours because the FBI asked another agent who's inside the TSBD to come up with a report which is contradicting the report, the joint report that comes out from Hosty and Bookout on the 22nd. And both these reports are basically North Pole and South Pole when it comes to that. They're completely the opposites, polar opposites on three settings. I explain that, of course, in the book. And it's quite important because this is how the second floor lunchroom encounter is invented with the cooperation of Roy Truey. What we know is that Oswald was the first one to leave. So you see, this is what makes Oswald suspicious to me, because he left 12 to 15 minutes after the shooting. He was that quick to go. His name is recorded as on top of the list, which we call the Revel list, which was a type list for criminal intelligence captain called Jack Revel. And that list is from people that left their name and address and phone number, etc., at the door before they were allowed to leave. It's incredibly that is what makes it really weird, because then he gets spotted by Roger Craig and he gets into a car, and my assumption is that he goes to the Texas Theater from there. I don't think that the Beckley thing where he gets his gun and all that never happened. Oswald himself says during the interrogation that the gun was tossed at him. You see, this is the problem, is that there were no recordings.
Yeah.
There were typists there, but the typists weren't used. So some of the federal agents started taking notes and make reports. The U.S. Secret Service does it as well. Thomas J. Kelly, who arrives in the evening of the 22nd and starts is part of the interrogations from there on Saturday and on Sunday. And there are reports from the USPS as well, Harry Dean Holmes, U.S. Postal Inspector. And slowly, by comparing the notes, handwritten ones with the typed ones, you can see that where things are matching and where things are made up. And go like, there's no way that guy would not mention that in his report if that was in there as such. You know, you can just see certain things and go, why doesn't that other person, say Captain Fritz, mention what Thomas Kelly says in there? Whereas the whole paragraph before that, everything is just matching exactly. Both reports are exactly the same. And yet a whopper like that is being left out of a report. It is just questionable. Look, here's the thing. I'm not really a conspiracy theorist. I really don't believe in them. I just think there's been a massive cover-up, huge cover-up. If you want to call that a conspiracy, then so be it. But I don't really subscribe to that.
But you believe there was more than one person involved in his plan to kill Kennedy?
Well, that's completely out of the remit of what I'm actually investigating. I mean, you could have my opinion on it, but it's going to be just an opinion. And, of course, I just say he peeved everyone off. That's what he did on several aspects, whether it's Cuba, whether it's Vietnam, whether it was, people are...
Well, whatever the motive, though, but the actual assassination was the work of more than one person acting alone.
That's what the evidence points
Right.
at. Yeah.
We're talking to Bart Kamp. The website is called prayer-man.com, and the book we're talking about is Prayer Man, More Than a Fuzzy Picture. I really encourage people to run out and buy this book and really sit down and watch this video, prayer-man.com, and then re-listen to the show. Okay? And I think you'll get more out of it. Okay, and I think we're going to have you come back to and give us a little bit more broader overview because you get into a lot of serious detail in here. Now, people can check out, again, they should check out the video at the Lancer Conference in November, okay? It's November 17th, 18th, and 19th. If you want to go in person, it's the Lorenzo Hotel in Dallas, Texas. Otherwise, assassinationconference.com or jfklancerpublication.com. Now, Bart Kamp, you said before that Oswald claimed that someone tossed a gun at him. I've never heard that before. Yeah. Tell us, do you believe he shot Tippit?
No.
Okay. Then what about the story about having a gun tossed? I've never heard that before.
Well, they basically, what they're doing is that they're arresting Oswald, and they basically say that Oswald pulled a gun from his belt, from his waist, and was going to shoot Officer Nick McDonald. That misfired, and then 3, 4, 5 cops are basically jumping on top of him and get the gun off him and so forth.
Gotcha.
Now, of course, the cops are going to try and keep the story straight, not mention any of that. But there was somebody else in that Texas theater that saw a gun being thrown, and that was George Applin. And then the other thing is that Oswald was questioned by Gus Rose, who questioned him just before Will Fritz was taking over. So this is between, say, 2:15 and 2:30, 2:40, and he makes mention about this in an interview about that. What did Oswald say? Well, Oswald said that the gun was tossed at him. You see, there's a problem is that we don't have all the information. What we do have is several requests, and I mean several requests, of Oswald not having legal representation at all. I mean, the first 10 hours, so from 2 o'clock in the afternoon until midnight when the press conference is, I think it's about 4 or 5 instances where he says, no legal representation whatsoever. He doesn't get his phone call until 24 hours after the deed, after his arrest, actually. 24 hours after his arrest. He calls it 10 to 2, makes a phone call. He was arrested around the same time. There's a lot of detail. That's like I said at the beginning, I managed to basically put a lot of dots on the I's and starting to create a picture by putting pieces of the puzzle linking together. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe there's this document that basically confirms this. Oh my God. And that's the next thing. And it's all interwoven or interconnected to each other. And then that in combination with video and pictures and so forth. And, and a good group of people also to talk with, to discuss with and go, what do you think of this? Yeah, it could be,
Now, in the Kindle version of the book, there's actually links to these documents which you can review them. Right, exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
Now you
more
mentioned
than 1,200.
Whoa, okay. All right. Now, you're going to be busy reading this book, Prayer Man.
The thing is, the aim of the book, for me, is to let the evidence do the talking. My opinion doesn't count. No one else's opinion counts. It's about what is actually happening here. Is what the Warren Commission said exactly what happened? No, it isn't. Hold on a minute. Let's look at the evidence and put it all together and see if we see patterns, if we see or anomalies and so forth. And that's all it is. I mean, it's a ton of work. I mean, but
how long have you been working on it?
Well, really active on it, research-wise. Really active 2015 till April, May this year. So yeah.
And you
full on.
You can look out for volume 2 in another 15 years. Let me ask you.
There's. It depends. There's talk of. I can do another 2 or 3 books on the Kennedy assassination, but it won't have much to do with Prayer Man. there are other things. It's because Malcolm Blunt's archive is a treasure trove of material, and not just because the documents are rare, and which is true, because a lot of documentation doesn't even have online representation. There is a whole swath of documents from National Archives that were released, but they haven't been digitized as such. And this is the stuff that especially came out after the ARB folded. So we're talking from the period from 1998 to about 2003, something like that, 5-year period. And I got tons of stuff that nobody knew about. And that's what made me actually keep going and keep looking for things, and especially decided to go through all those files at Malcolm Blunt's archive in his house and another property, just to plow through all that paperwork and find out things and so forth. And the thing was also, it wasn't an organized archive at all. So, it doesn't, you pull the folder out, it said something, but what it was the subject matter at hand? No, not at all. But you had to go through every sheet basically to go and make sure that what you're dealing with is exactly what it says and so forth. It was an enormous job, but at the same time, it enriched my body of work to such an unprecedented status that I was like, yeah, you know what? It's going to take a lot to go against this, because this is my challenge to anyone. The only time you can go against my body of work is with an opinion. You cannot go against the body of work with the evidence, because I dare you, I challenge you to do that. And that's not me being boisterous. It's just that I just put all the evidence in there. Whatever it is, I'll put it in there, even if it speaks against it. And I just basically put it in there. And on top of that, there's a massive important thing that a lot of people need to understand, is that when you have affidavits made, that's like under oath. But when you have Warren Commission testimony, that's under oath. But when you do an interview for a documentary or a book, you're not under oath. You can tell them whatever you want to tell them.
So true.
And
people can go to Amazon, Prayer Man, More Than a Fuzzy Picture, and look at the reviews. And the JFK community are very difficult to punch. Very opinionated.
Understatement of the year.
I know, right? Yeah. What do you make of that, man? You spent so much of your life, because we only got a couple of minutes left, right? But you spent so much of your life focused on this one incident, this one conspiracy, trying to find the truth, documenting, researching, looking at for archives. Your eyes must have been burning in the middle of the night staring at this damn fuzzy picture.
A lot of fatigue.
Yeah, man. What drives you to do that about this one topic? What is it?
I'm somebody who focused on something that not a lot of other people have focused on before. So if there's a certain rarity element to it, I like that. And then, listen, I was going to have a book out probably 3-4 years ago, if I not had stumbled onto Malcolm's archive and him letting me digitize every sheet of paper in his archive. So, and I was also going through convalescence with my right foot. I've had a lot of operations on my foot, and for that I had to sit in a chair. So I could have done two things: go through box set after box set of TV programs and movies, or just say, you know what, do some reading and just, but it was also because every time I felt I felt like, there's more to be had. And then there was more to be had, and there's more coming, and so forth. And I was just like, you know what? It just keeps on giving. And I just didn't expect it. I mean, when I got that Hosi document out of the files, this is something that's been in the archives since 1997, if I'm not mistaken. And nobody saw it. What they saw, the Wolf Fritz notes, but they didn't see the Hosi notes. Only Harold Weisberg mentioned about it once in a really small manner. But other than that, nothing. No one knew about it. And this is another thing. The archives, there's stuff there that no one has seen. But this is the problem. You have to go down there and you have to get it. And it's really slow, and it's really frustrating to deal with because your system isn't their system. You may have a RIF number, a record identification form, but they have their own index, and then they have to go out, and then they give you a card with only X amount of boxes, and you're being looked, they're being watched all the time while you try to reproduce all this stuff and so forth.
Well, I tell you, Bart Kamp, we got to thank you for your work, man, and your efforts in here. This is an investigation that deserves a commission, a real commission, to sit down on a panel of investigators to really go through all this and really do this.
If only.
Right? But thank God we do have people, volunteers like yourself, who are willing to put it. Your eyes get bloody, man, staring at that picture. I could have swore I saw Bigfoot in that picture. But thank you for your time, man, and thank you for your efforts here.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, no, great stuff, man.
And thank you to the listeners.
Once again, the website is prayer-man.com. The book is Prayer Man, More Than a Fuzzy Picture. You could find Bart Kamp on Twitter and Facebook. On Twitter, it's PM is Lee Oswald. And then also, too, there's going to be a video presentation, Lancer Conference in November 17th, 18th, and 19th, at Lorenzo Hotel if you want to go in person. Bart won't be there. Bart Kamp won't be there, but he's doing a video presentation. And you can watch that online at assassinationconference.com or jfklancepublications.com. Thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you.
And,
thank you very much
we
for having me.
Gotta have you come back and maybe get into more detail. Okay? Thank you so much, my friend.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you what. Read the book, and then you just pick your part where you want to.
I hear you, man. I hear you. Yeah, the audience should read the book. I should read the book, and then we'll have you come back and really a second dive into this one. Right. Thank you so much, my friend.
Yeah.
Good night.
Thank you very much. Bye bye.